Hey everybody, here's another really good shrub to know, both edible and medicinal. And I first identified this shrub when I did that video called Mad Dog, because maple ash and dogwood all have opposite branching, but I found this shrub and it wasn't a maple ash or a dogwood. It turns out it's in the Foliaceae family, and it's a viburnum. The common name is Nannyberry. There are 3 varieties: black haw, Nannyberry, and I believe what people call wild raisin, but they're all very similar. Okay, so I'm pretty sure this one is the standard Nannyberry, Viburnum lentago, but it really doesn't matter, because I find at least 2 of the varieties here. The easiest way to tell is by the fruit, which is oval in shape and dark purple, and it'll sometimes have a slight white bloom on it, like a white powdery coating. Also inside, just like all viburnums, there will be a flat seed. The seeds of the Nannyberry are somewhat oval in shape, they're flat, and they're black to light brown in color. And they kind of look like a watermelon seed. I'll save these seeds because I'm going to plant them, and I'm going to give some away to somebody. Another thing to look for is at the very tip of the branch there will usually be a little terminal bud that almost looks like a beak, or maybe a stork's head or something along that line. Now, I told you this shrub, being a viburnum in the Foliaceae family, however you pronounce that, has opposite branching. That's really the first thing you should look for when trying to identify any tree or shrub, is whether it has opposite or alternate branching, because that'll narrow down your search big time. Next thing is it has these simple ovate toothed leaves with a point on the end, and it usually kind of comes to an abrupt point right there. It's round and then it kind of narrows out real quick and makes a little point. Now, this can be a small shrub like you see right here, which is only maybe 6 or 8 feet tall, but it can also turn into a small tree. I think it's actually considered a tree, not a shrub, because depending on the variety it can get up to 30 feet tall, or perhaps taller. I mean, in the background here there's one right there that is probably a good 20 feet tall, but I'm going to go back in there and show you the bark, because as this tree gets older the bark changes, and I'll show you the changes in the bark as it matures. Let's just go back in here. I mean, this is the young bark. It tends to be fairly smooth with little dots on it. But as it gets older, it starts to break up. Here's one that's just a little bit older, and you're starting to see these vertical breaks in the bark. But if we get back in here even further, this is probably the daddy of all these trees, or mama. the bark becomes broken laterally and vertically, horizontally and vertically. And it just has a really broken appearance to it. And you can see this is that tree that's about 20 foot tall, and the biggest I've seen them is about this big, which is maybe 5 or 6 inches in diameter. Now a lot of times when they get about that big, they either get broken over by the wind or another tree falling on them, or they'll start to die off, and you'll see, you'll sometimes see little ones springing out from the side of it. I mean, this is that one that's about 10 or 15 feet tall, and then here's a couple more little ones springing out of the side of it, probably because it's getting ready to die off. Now some of these varieties, if you look closely at the leaf stem, there will be little wings on it, and that's another way to identify it. But this one, they're not very prominent. Alright, so best time to harvest this is going to be September, October, and perhaps November. But late September, early October around here, you know, in southern Michigan is the best time. That's when they start to get ripe. And that's also the time when the leaves start changing color on the trees, so it's kind of easy to spot this. If you look for the changing color of the leaves, they will be kind of reddish in color, from a red to a purple, and you can tend to spot them in the undergrowth a little easier if you look for that red coloration, because a lot of the other stuff will still be green. You should be able to see that red coloration there. That's a good thing to look for. It makes it easy to spot these from a good distance away. Narrow down your search, and you can see the berries on the end. They form a cluster of berries out at the end of the branch, and in the early summer that cluster will be a white cluster of flowers similar to elderberry, or in a rough way, wild carrot. The same type of flower cluster. Now I find the best place to find the nannyberry, or black haw, wild raisin, whatever you want to call it, is in rich dirt in a somewhat open area near water. But you can find it in mature hardwoods as an understory vegetation. But generally when you find it in the big hardwoods, or when I find it in the big hardwoods, it's I believe it's the other variety called wild raisin, which is actually a much smaller fruit, but it's a little bit sweeter. So really you can find this growing just about anywhere. You can find it in mature hardwoods, you can find it growing around the edges of swamps or along the edges of creeks. You can find it in thickets, and you can probably even find it right out in the open field, although I personally haven't. I find it growing pretty much everywhere but an open field. So to narrow down your search, I guess the best bet would be to try and concentrate on areas that retain moisture and are somewhat open. That would probably be your best bet. Okay, so I guess one last thing. I said the plant was medicinal, and even though I'm not a doctor and I've never used it, you can probably do your own research and find out the properties and how to use it. But the part used is the inner bark, and the same is true for all viburnums. They can all be used medicinally. They contain viburnum, which is some type of chemical or compound that is used medicinally for whatever ailments, I don't know, but I figured I'd just throw it out there. I'll just give you a shot of the area. I mean, there's well, there used to be a lot of ash trees in here, but they're all dead. But there's some cottonwood and maple and stuff in here. Hackberry, quite a wide variety of trees. And there's quite a bit of ground cover because this area does get quite a bit of light, and I think that's important for a good nannyberry. I've heard these fruits described as a lot of different things. Some people say they taste like dates, some people say they taste like raisins. To me, it's almost like a mix between a date and raisin. The texture of the fruit is like a date because you can put it in your mouth and it kind of melts in your mouth, and it's a bit gooey and sugary, really sweet and really tasty. One of the best wild fruits there is, I think. And it does have a bit of a raisin flavor as well. And when those berries get old, they'll shrivel up. And even though they're shriveled, you can still eat them. But I think that's going to wrap it up. I mean, I went over the leaves, toothed leaves, ovate with a pointed tip, opposite branching, grows anywhere from 6 to 30 feet tall. Gets a white cluster of flowers in the late spring, which turn into dark blue oval fruits with a flat oval to round shaped seed that can be anywhere from tan to brown to black. The bark starts out relatively smooth with little spots all over it, and it ends up becoming more broken as time goes on. And it can be anywhere from, about 1 inch in diameter all the way up to probably 6 inches in diameter. And to finish this video up, the easiest way for me to identify this shrub or tree is by that little beak-like bud at the end of each branch. Not every branch will have it, but that little beak-like bud is very distinct. And if you just get out and you look at these shrubs, you'll notice it. That's pretty much going to do it. Just say thanks for watching, and if you guys know anything more about this, please leave a comment. If you know how to use it medicinally or whatever, if you have any experience with that, please feel free to leave a comment on that too. And just say, like I said, thanks for watching, thanks for all the comments and support. Talk to you guys later. Now that the video's over, I can actually get in there and pick some of these and eat them. It's kind of hard to do it one-handed, so that's why you don't see me eating a lot of this stuff with the camera. It's just a little too tricky getting through the woods and eating it and filming it all at the same time. But believe me, I get out and I forage like a squirrel. I figure I'll just add one more thing. Nice thing about the viburnums in general is there are no poisonous berries in the viburnum family. So as long as you can identify a shrub to the viburnum family, it's safe to try and eat it. Some of the berries will be bitter or just won't taste good. And the same is true for the nannyberries or the black haws or wild raisins. Sometimes, from what I've read, you'll find one that just doesn't taste good. But if you do find a nannyberry that doesn't taste good, find another bush in the area, because it's a really good fruit, full of energy, and it should taste good. I've yet to find one that tastes bad. Something I didn't include in the video, but now I'm gonna, is I'm more of a forager than a gatherer. I tend to go out and I just forage this stuff as I'm riding my bike or hiking or hunting or fishing or whatever it may be. If I see something that's edible, I eat it and I move on. But I was thinking about that, and it's a kind of a good point for the hunters and hikers, because even in the wintertime, if you get out, there's really not much in the woods to eat. But if you find those old nannyberry bushes, even though the leaves are all gone, you can still identify it by that beak-like terminal bud. And it's possible to find those dried fruits still on the shrub, even in the middle of winter. You know, because in the middle of winter, probably the only thing I find that's even close to a berry would be like a rose hip or something. So it's kind of nice little treat when you're out and there's nothing else around if you stumble into one of those nannyberry bushes. Anyway, thanks for watching. And if you guys know anything else about this plant or any of the viburnums, you know, feel free to leave a comment. I appreciate getting comments and tips and questions and all that good stuff. And just say thanks for watching, and thanks for all the comments and support. Talk to you guys later.